At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with Mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised.
My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today, I'm discussing the case of Dana Bradley. In 1981, the coastal town of St. John's was shattered by a single haunting action at a roadside bus stop. What followed became the most expensive and exhaustive investigation in Canadian history, a manhunt spanning decades that involved hundreds of suspects, false confessions, and a question that has lingered for over 40 years. Who was behind the wheel that day? This is the case of Dana Bradley. It's Monday, December 14th, 1981, in St. John's, Newfoundland, and Labrador, Canada, and 14-year-old Dana Bradley has plans to meet up with friends after school. She's in the 9th grade at I.J. Sampson Junior High School, and while her friend Terry skipped last period to head to the Cornwall Beauty Salon to get a haircut, Dana and her friend Penny decide to finish the school day and meet up with Terry after. According to reporting by Adam Rose for Twin City News, Dana and Penny leave school at 2:30 p.m. They walk the few blocks down to the salon to meet up with Terry and see her freshly styled hair. After that, they do what a lot of teenagers in this area and time did. They stick out their thumbs, hoping to hitchhike a ride to Terry's house instead of waiting for the bus. This was commonplace in the small but bustling coastal city of St. John's. It's the capital and largest city in the province, with a population of about 90,000 people at this time. But it maintained its small-town vibe, and it's been described as tight-knit, one of those cities where everyone knows everyone. So it doesn't take long for them to get a ride from a Mount Pearl man. He doesn't take them all the way to Terry's house, but he gets them pretty close. He drops them at the corner of Topsail Road and Cohen Avenue. From here, it's only about a 10-minute walk. They all hang out at Terry's house until about 4 p.m., Then Dana and Penny make the around 15-minute walk to Penny's house at 8 Curie Place. Again, they do what most teenagers do and just hang out for about an hour. Until 5:10 p.m., that's when Dana decides it's time to go home. Dana lives with her mom and stepfather close to the school. It's about an hour walk from where she is. So before leaving Penny, she starts making phone calls trying to get a ride home instead of walking or taking the bus. First, she tries to call her grandparents, but no one answers. So she calls her mom, Dawn. According to reporting by Barb Sweet for The Telegram, it's actually her birthday, but she's at work. She's the owner of the New Dawn Unisex Styling Salon, so she'd presumably have some flexibility to give Dana a ride, especially on her birthday. But no one answers at the salon either. Finally, Dana calls home, and again, there's no answer. But Dana is persistent, so she calls home again. And finally, someone answers. It's her stepfather, Jeff Levitz. But when Dana asks for a ride, Jeff tells her she'll have to take the bus. He's busy cooking and preparing for Dawn's birthday celebration that night. As Dana walks out the door, she tells Penny that she's all set with bus fare, and she says that she'll give her a call when she makes it home. Then she walks across the cul-de-sac towards the bus stop on Topsail Road. Now it's about 5:30 at Dana's home at 160 Patrick Street. Her mom, Dawn, and stepfather, Jeff, are expecting her back any minute to celebrate Dawn's birthday. But as each minute, then each hour passes, panic begins to set in. I'm sure they're racking their brains thinking of every route Dana may have taken home, the possibility that maybe the bus broke down and she had to walk. But even then, she would have been home close to 7 p.m. They know something is very wrong. Dana isn't the type of kid to just not communicate if she stops somewhere on her way home. There was also no trouble at home. By all accounts, she was very close to both of her parents. So they start calling Dana's friends and other family members, but no one has seen her since leaving Penny's house. So Dawn and Jeff go in person to report Dana missing to the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, or the RNC. But according to statements Jeff made to CTV News, the RNC has a policy of waiting 24 hours before investigating a missing persons report. It's exactly what no parent wants to hear when their child has gone missing. So while they do formally make a report, they're told that basically nothing will be done until the next day. On the night of December 15th, the details of Dana's disappearance are featured by local radio and news stations, including CBC's live evening broadcast. The following day, Dana's photo and information are also featured by local newspapers, explaining that she was last seen wearing blue pants and cowboy boots. And listen, I know it's cliché, but in all the early reporting on this case, it's clear that Dana's disappearance did deeply disturb the residents of St. John's. A child going missing in this way wasn't commonplace, so not only were residents concerned, Dana's case got a lot of media attention. And it's a good thing that it did, because all that media attention led to one of the largest breaks in Dana's case. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together, and Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing, especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
According to reporting by Barb Sweet for The Telegram, on December 16th, just 2 days after Dana was last seen, a man named Harry Smeaton was at his cousin's house. There, he picked up a newspaper and began reading it. As he's flipping through the pages, he stumbles upon one of the first articles written about Dana Bradley's case. It's titled, "This Girl is Missing and the Police Are Concerned." By the headline is a picture of Dana, and Harry immediately recognizes her from 2 days prior. As it turns out, he and his brother John were selling Christmas trees in the empty lot behind the bus stop on Topsail Road, and they saw Dana. At this point, Harry puts down the paper, runs to the phone, and calls his brother John. When the call connects, Harry tells him about the newspaper article he just read. But John says that he'd seen it too, and he already called the police to tell them what they saw. At this point in the investigation, they're the last two people to have seen Dana Bradley before she went missing. When they sit down with police, they explain what they saw. They say that they came from Gander. It's about 4 hours north of St. John's. They were there to sell Christmas trees in that empty lot behind the bus stop. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a bustling part of town, and this lot in particular was directly across from a Tim Hortons, so it seemed like a good place to set up shop. They say that they were sitting in their truck waiting for potential customers when they saw Dana walk to the bus stop at about 5:20 p.m., which matches perfectly with the timeline Penny provided of Dana leaving her house. The Smeatons say that Dana appeared to be waiting for the bus for a few minutes, but eventually stuck her thumb out to hitchhike. While this was common in St. John's, being from the much smaller town of Gander, this really stuck out to them. And since they didn't really have anything else to do, they basically just sat in their truck watching. And they say it wasn't long before a man in a rusty, light-colored sedan pulled over to give Dana a ride. Dana pulled at the passenger side handle to get in, but it wouldn't open, so the man had to reach over and open the door from the inside. From here, Dana gets into the front passenger seat, and the Smeatons watch them drive away. This is officially the biggest lead in Dana's case, and while they didn't think to jot down the license plate number, they are able to give investigators enough information to narrow things down quite a bit. Based on their statements, investigators are now looking for a beige, tan, or faded yellow four-door sedan, likely a 1973 to 1976 Dodge Dart or Plymouth Valiant. They also commissioned a composite drawing of the man they saw, who they believed to be a white male in his mid-20s with darker colored hair. Again, all of this is huge and the biggest break in the case thus far, but it didn't take long for the tips to start coming right to Dana's parents, or at least what they thought could be tips from the man who took Dana. In the days after she went missing, they start receiving phone calls from an anonymous man. These calls were coming in at all hours of the day and night and were deeply disturbing. At first, the man called repeatedly asking to speak with Dana. Then he began telling her parents that he and Dana were running away to get married, and that they were having a baby. At one point, he even asked for Dawn to give them her blessing to get married. And eventually, he called and said that he killed Dana. Literally, quote, "I killed Dana," end quote. Finally, the police step in, they tap the home phone, and they're able to trace the calls back to 22-year-old Bruce Gerard Connors of St. John's, who was promptly arrested. After thoroughly interviewing him, investigators concluded that he had no actual connection to Dana's case, and the calls were just a very cruel hoax. The following year, he was given 9 months in prison for his actions, and is not considered to be an official suspect in Dana's case. Now, I'm not going to even begin to claim that I know what Dana's family was thinking at this point, but I have to imagine it was bittersweet. While the calls are obviously awful, it seemed clear that this man didn't kill Dana, but this hope that Dana was still alive would soon come crashing down. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time, and in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
from the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the Keys. Any leads on who they might have been running for?
The cartel killed my family.
I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
On the night of December 18th, a man named Dale Smith took his family to a wooded area off Maddox Cove Road, about 30 kilometers or 19 miles south of St. John's. The area was pretty desolate and became a popular place for people to dump their trash. In an interview with Barb Sweet for The Telegram, Dale says his 4-year-old twins were quick to point out some discarded toys in the area. But they weren't there to discard any old toys or trash. Instead, they came to look for a good tree to cut down and decorate for Christmas. And it seems he wasn't the only one in the area that day, because Dale recalls seeing footprints in the fresh snow. As Dale's looking through the area hunting for the perfect Christmas tree, he says he sees what he thinks is a mannequin, in part due to the toys his children pointed out. Maybe a local store had dumped some old items here. But let's be real, I think we all know where this is going. As Dale gets closer and takes a bit longer to look, he realizes it's a person. But he still doesn't get too close, and he's not thinking worst case scenario just yet. He thinks maybe this person's just asleep. So without drawing his children's attention, he tells his wife, and he asks her to take a look. And when she looks, again from a distance, she immediately recognizes the blue pants and cowboy boots. She's seen the reports about Dana Bradley and tells Dale that she thinks it could be her body. But they have 2 4-year-old children with them who don't need to see this. So without alarming the kids, they quickly head back to their truck. As they drive out of the area, Dale flags down a man who was cutting wood. He tells him what they just saw and asks him to keep watch while he heads back home to call the police. When police get to the scene, they immediately recognize the person as Dana Bradley. She was found lying on her back, fully clothed, and it appears someone had posed her body to tuck her school books under her arm. This was a detail Dale said that he never saw from a distance. But after performing an autopsy, they determined Dana had been beaten to death. Her skull was fractured, likely due to multiple blows from a blunt object, and her jaw was broken. According to reporting by the Canadian press, Dana was sexually assaulted. Investigators searched this area extensively and with extreme care, at times getting on their hands and knees looking for any evidence they could find. They also bring in propane heaters to help thaw the ground so they can dig for clues. However, unfortunately, according to reporting by CTV, very little evidence was found at the scene. They specifically state that no blood, semen, or traces of skin were collected. Investigators have said that that's in part due to how long Dana's body had been at the scene. They estimate that she was killed shortly after she was last seen getting into the man's car. They add that over those 4 days, the area had seen quite a bit of rain and snow, which of course could have washed away or compromised quite a bit of evidence. But they are able to collect something. It seems that they gathered 10 strands of dark-colored hair from the scene, and they don't believe that they belong to Dana, but they also can't confirm that they belong to her killer. So they don't have a lot, but they also don't have nothing. And after speaking with Dana's parents, it seemed that nothing was missing from her body. Specifically, her gold chain necklace was still on her neck. This led investigators to believe that her murder and assault was not a robbery gone wrong. Of course, all of this is happening so fast. Dana went missing on December 14th. They get the prank phone calls, legitimate witnesses come forward, and by the 18th, her body is recovered. By the 20th, her autopsy is complete. And the following day, her family has a service for Dana at Wesley United Church. It's led by Reverend Robert Mills. He expresses his sympathy, but also his outrage. The church is packed as he reiterated what most people in this community were already thinking. He said Dana's murder has shocked, terrified, and angered everyone. That this type of crime doesn't happen in their community. And he added, quote, "It only goes to show that despite all the goodness, all the kindness, there is still too much evil, too many evil people in the world." End quote. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It sounds cliche to hear a town be outraged about the death of a child, to say that it changed their community forever. But it's a cliche because it's real. This town wasn't just upset, they were filled with rage. After Dana's death was declared a homicide, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, largely took over the investigation. And it would quickly become one of the most expensive and extensive in the history of Canada. The media also was following it very closely. And this is just my opinion, but I do believe that this mix of rage from the community, demanding accountability, and the backing of the media covering every aspect of this case is at least part of the reason it got so many resources. Again, a cliche, but the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease. And I think this case proves that. Between the RNC and the RCMP, they assigned 35 investigators to work Dana's case full-time. Of course, they interviewed Dana's family, and they are all cleared. It's worth noting here that there have been many statements about Dana's good relationship with her stepfather, Jeff. It seems that her biological father was never really in her life, so Jeff was her dad. And while her parents have done very few interviews, it's usually Jeff who does the speaking. Dana's mom, Dawn, has been very clear that it's just too painful to talk about her. They were also able to track down the man from Mount Pearl who gave Dana and her friends a ride that day. He's never been publicly named or named a person of interest or suspect in this case. They also find 2 other crucial witnesses. Like the man from Mount Pearl, their identities have also been kept private, but were crucial to the investigation. According to reporting by PNI Atlantic News, these people are described as a couple, and the couple told investigators that on the night that Dana went missing, they were driving north on Maddox Cove Road, near where Dana's body was later found, and they saw a car matching the description of the one Dana was last seen getting into. It was parked on the side of the road, with the front passenger side door open, and the internal light of the vehicle was on. Not far from the car, near the woods, they saw a man standing with no jacket on despite the freezing temperatures. They described this man as white, possibly in his mid-20s, with darker hair. After investigators get this information, they are more determined to find Dana's killer than ever, because it matches exactly what the Smeaton brothers told them about the car, and about what the man looked like. It also matched where Dana's body was found, and their estimate that she was killed and placed there not long after she got into the vehicle at the bus stop. So they commissioned another composite sketch to combine the description from this couple with the Smeaton brothers, and that's released to the media before Christmas. As the year comes to an end, investigators undertake a massive search for this man and this vehicle. They check hundreds of cars matching the descriptions, mostly Dodge Darts and Plymouth Valiants. They also interview hundreds of men and administer countless polygraph tests. They do extensive searches of the area near where Dana was found, and in other areas as they follow hundreds of tips from the public. They also try to think outside the box a bit and put some of their witnesses under hypnosis, hoping they'll uncover repressed memories. They're gathering and sifting through a massive amount of information, just trying to make sense of it all to find Dana's killer. According to reporting by the Niagara Falls Review, by the 6-week mark of Dana's murder, they'd spent over $500,000 on the investigation, looked at thousands of vehicles, and interviewed upwards of 1,000 men. They also maintained a suspect list of nearly 250 people. But as we see in way too many cases, the investigation, the rage, the media coverage, the intensity of it all begins to wane and taper off. By May 1982, the task force was significantly reduced, as were the tips coming in to investigators. But the public was still deeply concerned, especially as they began to worry that they may have a serial killer on their hands. See, Dana wasn't the only person to go missing in St. John's in recent years. But unfortunately, when 17-year-old Sharon Drover vanished on December 29, 1978, after her shift at McDonald's, the media didn't really pick up her case. Sharon was living in foster care at that time, and wasn't even reported missing until over a month after she was last seen. But like Dana, it's believed she was trying to hitchhike when she went missing. And she's never been found. Then, of course, Dana was killed about 3 years later in 1981. After that was a 25-year-old Indigenous woman named Henrietta Millick. She was last seen on December 10, 1982, being harassed by two men at the Key Club on Water Street. Her purse, keys, and bank book were all found left behind at the bar. A witness would later come forward to say that he and a friend picked up a hitchhiker matching her description, but he says that they dropped her off on the Trans-Canada Highway. She's never been found. And finally, on November 12, 1984, 20-year-old Pamela Asprey was with a friend at Martin's Lounge on Water Street when she told that friend that she'd be back in 20 minutes. She left her wallet behind, and it's believed that she may have been engaging in sex work as that was her known profession. She was last seen entering a dark blue car with an unidentified male driver, and was never seen again. While none of these cases received the media attention or resources that Dana Bradley's case did, they shared quite a bit of concerning similarities. All four were under the age of 26, all were female, living or working in the St. John's area, all went missing in November or December, and all entered vehicles with unknown men. While investigators have in the past and to this day declined to state that the cases are connected, the community was rightfully concerned that they may be. But then, in January 1986, the RCMP received an anonymous letter about Dana Bradley's case that no amount of investigating or speculating could have anticipated.
Where is Daredevil?
I'm right here. Don't miss the return of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again.
So what's next?
I feel liberated.
We're gonna take this city back.
Over-medicated.
In an all-new season, now streaming only on Disney+.
They're hunting us. It's time we started hunting them.
I can work with that.
This should be tons of fun.
Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again, now streaming only on Disney+.
By 1986, the investigation into the murder of 14-year-old Dana Bradley had severely tapered off, with investigators saying that they were getting just about 50 tips a year, a very small number compared to the thousands they'd gotten when her case first hit the media. They had a composite sketch of the man they believed to have killed her, as well as a semi-vague description of a rather popular style of vehicle. They'd interviewed thousands of people and looked at thousands of vehicles, even digging through local dumps to see if maybe the car had been disposed of. It was the largest and most expensive investigation in the history of the country, and while investigators alluded to having suspects and promising leads, they weren't telling the public much, and it didn't seem like the investigation was really progressing. That is, until January of that year, when the RCMP got an anonymous letter implicating someone in Dana's murder, or possibly found this letter. Unfortunately, we have conflicting reporting from some pretty reputable sources. Some say the letter was mailed to the RCMP. Other reporting says that the letter was found at a post office. So take that for what you will. This letter has also never been published in full, but here's what we know. This letter directly implicated 35-year-old Mount Pearl resident David Grant Somerton, who does have a history of sexual assault and armed robbery. According to interviews with investigators, they say his appearance was a match for the composite sketch created back in 1981. So they bring him in for questioning and speak with him for 18 hours straight. Nearly a full day of speaking to this man. And he confesses to killing Dana Bradley. He said he created a homemade blackjack, which is basically a small blunt force weapon illegal in many areas of the world. He says that was the murder weapon, and that he later buried it near the clearing off Maddox Cove Road where Dana was found. He also said he buried a black jacket near the same area, and as far as the car, he says he buried that at the Robin Hood Bay landfill. Like the letter, transcripts, video, audio of this interrogation have never been made public. So there's obviously a lot in those 18 hours that we just don't know. But RCMP Superintendent Jack Lavers has told the media that Somerton's confession was incredibly detailed and included information that they believed only the killer would know. And on January 13, 1986, Somerton was arrested for the first-degree murder of Dana Bradley. As he's sitting in jail, investigators get to work digging up the evidence he told them about. Again, they pulled out the propane heaters to thaw the ground to dig near where Dana was found. They also excavated nearly 200 vehicles from the Robin Hood Bay City dump. They spent over $1 million on these efforts, just to confirm this confession. And shortly after Somerton's first court appearance, he recanted that confession. As if Dana Bradley's family hadn't been through enough. Somerton later said that his statements were coerced out of him by police, and that he would have said anything to get out of the interrogation room after 18 hours. In 1986, the first-degree murder charges were stayed after investigators couldn't find anything linking him to Dana's murder. But Somerton did serve 2 years in prison for public mischief and misleading police. In 2015, the murder charges were officially dropped completely after DNA evidence cleared him of the crime. He passed away in 2021 at the age of 70 and maintained his innocence in this case. But let's take a small step back to that DNA. Unfortunately, not much developed in Dana's case since Somerton's confession back in 1986. They were definitely still getting tips and investigating, but there weren't many major verified revelations. Luckily, this DNA helped rule a lot of things out. It's a bit unclear exactly when they were able to develop the full male DNA profile using evidence collected from the 1981 crime scene, and they haven't told us exactly what was used to develop this profile. But it seems likely that they were able to test the hairs, and given the timing of this, I'd assume that they did that using the root of one of the hairs. But that is just a guess. Like I just told you, in 2015, DNA was used to clear Somerton completely, but they didn't announce this DNA to the public until 2016. Luckily, using this DNA, they were able to clear up a major claim that drew insane interest from the public and much grief to Dana's parents. In 2011, a man named Danny Tuff came forward to police to say that he'd witnessed Dana's murder when he was 6 years old. He said the man who killed Dana also sexually assaulted him. He named his former neighbor, Thomas Carey. And Carey wasn't just some unknown man. He was the former mayor of Witless Bay, and according to reporting by the PNI Atlantic News, a convicted pedophile. When asked why he was bringing this to police so many decades later, Tuff said that he'd stopped drinking a few years prior, and repressed memories had come to the surface that he was ready to talk about. So here's what Danny Tuff says happened to Dana Bradley. He says Carey borrowed his father's 1972 Dodge Dart to take him and his 4-year-old brother to McDonald's while their parents were out of the house. After leaving McDonald's, Danny says Thomas Carey saw Dana at the bus stop, picked her up, sexually assaulted her, and hit her with a tire iron, resulting in her death, all while he watched. Danny added that he was the one who placed Dana's arms in their final position with the books tucked underneath. He said he felt bad and wanted her to be ready for school the next day. He also claims that he was with Thomas Carey when he returned to the scene to retrieve his jacket and jumper cables, and that he remembers another car passing by at this time, alluding to the tip from the anonymous couple placing the car at the scene around the same time. Now, this was huge news. Local stations ran countless stories on this man's claims, who at this time was using the pseudonym Robert. Now, he also included a lot of other details that I'm not going to go into, because this story was ultimately deemed false by authorities, DNA evidence, and Dana's parents don't believe it either. While they almost never speak to the media, they did for this. They said that they were concerned that his statements were occupying too much of the investigative team's time that could have been spent clearing other leads. Dana's stepfather Jeff also said, quote, "I'm sorry for Robert and the abuse he suffered at the hands of his alleged abuser, but he needs to let Dana's murder go and pursue his abuse case alone." End quote. In the end, the RCMP said that they didn't have enough evidence to move forward with sexual assault charges against Carey for assaulting Danny Tuff, which I'm sure had to be devastating for him. And I really don't want to minimize that. But it does seem clear that this man did not kill Dana Bradley. They spent 16 months investigating the claims, and it appears that there were inconsistencies in those claims. including false information released by the media. In their witness statements, the Smeaton brothers, the ones who saw Dana at the bus stop that day, also said that they had a clear line of sight into that vehicle, enough to help create a composite sketch of the man driving, and they said that there was no one else in that car. Though I will say Danny says he can explain that too. He says he and his brother weren't in car seats, so it's likely they wouldn't have seen them in the back. Danny's father has also come forward to the media. He said he did have a Dodge Dart, but that it was a 2-door model, not 4 as was claimed by Danny. He also provided photos to prove his claim, and he admitted that while searching through those photos, he found pictures of a Plymouth Valiant. He used it for parts. He also claims that in the months following Dana Bradley's murder, investigators came to his home to inspect the vehicles. When asked where those vehicles were now, he said that they were buried. And while the RCMP declined to use resources to dig those cars up, a local group raised money to do it themselves, which I will say seems like a good faith gesture to find Dana's killer. But in the end, it seems that nothing of value was found. The RCMP also consulted with a forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Collins. He suggested that Danny might be suffering from false memory syndrome, and that he basically believes all the memories are real, but they aren't. This was later challenged by a neuropsychiatrist hired by the Telegram, who said that Danny was likely suffering from PTSD and repressed memories. But like I said, this came down to DNA. And Thomas Carey was officially cleared of any involvement in Dana's murder when his DNA wasn't a match to what they found at the crime scene. In the end, there's only one known person of interest in this case who was never cleared using DNA, a man whose identity has stayed hidden for decades. And that's the man who was chopping wood on the night Dana's body was found. The man Dale Smith asked to watch the scene as he went to call police. His name is Terrence Wayne Alexander. He worked at the Imperial Life Assurance Company on Water Street, which just so happened to be very close to the jewelry store that Dana's stepfather was the co-owner of, and close to the bank where Dana's aunt worked. In some reporting, they say that she worked right next door. Like I said, St. John's felt like a small town where everyone knew everyone. He was also close friends with a man who was neighbors with Dana's principal, Fred Tolk, and at one time the lead investigator on Dana's case, Jack Lavers. And he also attended Wesley United Church where Dana's family attended and held her memorial service at. It was also very close to Dana's home. In addition to some of these looser ties to Dana, during their investigation, the RCMP discovered that he knew a man who drove a 1973 Dodge Dart Sport, and that his brother lived near where Dana and her friends hitchhiked on the day she was last seen. Now, RCMP investigators have admitted that the evidence against Alexander was strictly circumstantial, and expressed regret that it was overlooked during the initial 1981 investigation. And while they've said that many people in this case have been cleared using DNA evidence, they've never listed Alexander as one of those people before he passed away in 2021, leaving another huge question mark in Dana's already extremely mysterious case. Which brings me right to our call to action. Please share Dana's case. It's very clear that investigators are not telling us everything, but that they also have a ton of information. According to some of the latest reporting, they have about 10 filing cabinets full of documents and an entire hard drive of information. Inspector Pat Cahill of the RCMP's Major Crime Unit said, quote, "A small, seemingly insignificant piece of information could be the tip we need to identify the person or persons responsible for Dana's death," end quote. But outside of her case, Dana's been described as a beautiful young girl excited about life, someone who is friendly, smart, and caring with an infectious laugh. Her principal said that she was an excellent student with high marks, who was passionate about creating and studying art. He added that her future possibilities seemed endless. Dana Bradley truly seemed like a beautiful soul taken way too soon from this world. So please share. As a reminder, 14-year-old Dana Bradley was last seen on December 14, 1981 in St. John's. Her body was found 4 days later on December 18th near Maddox Cove. If you have any information, please call the RCMP at 709-772-5400. Or if you want to stay anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open and our emotional support puppies, Popcorn and Heber, are in the room. Let's go right into the case. And the first thing I have on my list is that media pressure moves mountains. And I think that this case is such a good example of that. Specifically, I'm talking about the newspaper article that got the Smeatons to talk. That is one of the biggest tips in this case. Them seeing her at that bus stop just really changed it forever. I mean, I don't know how that would impact the composite sketch, obviously, and the description of the car. It really seemed like both of those things coming together, again, with the tip from the couple who saw the man in the vehicle and reported it because they saw the media on the case. Like, so many tips in this case came from the media, and I just wanted to point that out. I know it's really obvious. But again, I think it just backs the idea of sharing these cases. And I know that almost every single week, the call to action is just share. Just share. But I keep saying it and I keep reminding you of a call to action because I want you to know how powerful those shares are. I mean, obviously, we're not in 1981 anymore, and most people aren't reading physical papers, but they are scrolling on their phones. So again, please share, please share. I try to share a case like every day if I can, but just know that one share can be really powerful. The next thing on my list I wanted to address was just Dana's parents rarely speaking to the media. This was a theme in this case. And in a few of these articles, you'd see a small quote from Dana's mom, Dawn, talking about how she just couldn't handle talking to the media, which I think is fair. And there's only a handful of interviews from Jeff. And I guess it's just something I wanted to address. I'm sure you guys already know how I feel about that this type of thing is impossible without having to also face the media. So I just wanted to, one, reiterate that, and two, address kind of their absence in this episode. I feel like in most episodes, I try to include a lot more of the families, and we just didn't have a lot here. For the most part, they stayed private, and I totally understand why. Now let's go into media discrepancies. There were some tough ones in this case. I went down some rabbit holes trying to verify some facts. The one was just like her mom's birthday. There was some conflicting reporting that her birthday was possibly the next day, but then I found some pretty solid reporting about her stepfather, cooking dinner, expecting her home for her mom's birthday that night. So as far as I could find, it was her mom's birthday. The next thing was the sexual assault. In the early reporting on Dana's case, most of the articles say that, the testing had come back inconclusive. But it does seem that at some point it changed, because in more recent reporting, specifically by CBC News and the Globe and Mail, they say outright that she was sexually assaulted. So I did just want to say here that we do have some conflicting reporting, but it does appear at some point over the 40 plus years since Dana's murder, this has been confirmed. But let's go on to the hero of this episode. I named the Smeaton brothers, and I think it's that call, right? It was just like, I was like, there is good in the world. Reading this story of Harry calling John and John having already made the report, I could cry. This is exactly what I think you want from a witness. It seems like they've given some interviews if you guys want to check them out, but they just seem like two good guys who saw something that, they never expected would result in this. And shout out to you guys for doing exactly what you should have done. I just can't, you guys. Like, again, for him to call and be like, oh my gosh, I just saw in the paper that girl that we saw, she's missing. And he's like, no, I already know. I already called the police. Like, shout out to you guys. Shout out to you guys. All right, I'll stop talking about the Smeaton brothers and move on to our segment of hope. This comes from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's their blog, but I do believe it's reliable. And this was written by Patricia Davis in February of 2026 this year. And the title reads, try not to cry. Justice after 61 years, solving the murder of 12-year-old Mary Teresa, won for the record books. Now, this article is talking about Mary Teresa Simpson, who was 12, and in the 1960s, she was killed in Elmira, New York. They also discuss how this was a small community that was rocked to the core by this murder, which I don't mean to keep harping on it, you guys, but it's a very real thing that happens, unfortunately. And I want to read you a quote that is very hard to read from her older sister. Her name is Linda Galpin, and she was 16 when her sister was murdered. She said, quote, I couldn't believe she was in a casket. I tried to jump in it. I wanted to be in there with her, end quote. I'm sorry for getting emotional, but I'm not going to make myself read that a ton of times. You guys have already heard me cry, and you're going to keep hearing me cry on this podcast. That is the hardcore reality, and just as much as other podcasts don't want to shy away from gory details of the crime scene, I don't like to shy away from real feelings from these families. It's just the way I operate. I feel like they're almost just as hard to hear, but in my mind, more important. But that is just my opinion. Let's get on to the good news. The article continues to read, today, more than 61 years later, Elmira Police Chief Kristen Thorne made a stunning announcement. They've finally found Mary's killer. It's the oldest case ever solved with DNA. Thorne said, quote, this is a historic day at the Elmira Police Department. Justice after 61 years, end quote. And the article says, perhaps the most remarkable of all, and I agree, police preserved evidence in the case for more than 6 decades, long before anyone even imagined DNA would become a powerful investigative tool. It looks like in 2003, 39 years after her murder, DNA from semen on her skirt was entered into a DNA national database, but there were no matches. It was resubmitted in 2014, and there was still nothing. But it looks like they were awarded a grant in 2022 for advanced testing. That was shipped off to Othram. They uploaded it into 2 public DNA bases, and the FBI used it to build family trees, identifying a son who submitted a DNA sample. His father, Raymond Murray, a truck driver, lived and raised a family in Elmira. He died when he was 72 of natural causes and was buried in Elmira. So they exhumed his body. And I do want to mention that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children provided the funds and the expertise of a forensic anthropologist to do that exhumation. So they exhumed Raymond Murray's body, took the DNA, and it was a match. this one is tugging at my heart, you guys, because it looks like dozens of officers, many of whom were now retired, were there for the announcement. And her sister said, quote, "I'm just glad justice was finally done. I always said it would never happen in my lifetime." End quote. I think that this made the perfect segment of hope for Dana Bradley's case, and I just want to give a shout out to everyone involved. They don't list who they got the grant from the DNA testing, but shout out to, these investigators, to this family, to Othram, to, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for helping fund some of this. And again, making it the oldest cold case solved by DNA. That is insane. And all because, well, not all because, right? It's a combined effort, but in large part because this police department retained this DNA evidence properly. It should have never taken this long, right? Like, that part sucks, but to have all these forces come together to see this solve, and her sister, I'm glad that she saw it in her lifetime. But, as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.